Hey everybody, ready to go. Welcome to our webinar. Thanks for taking the time to join us. This is the members webinar number 2 of the year, which is our regularly scheduled webinar. We have a number of other ones scheduled throughout the year that's always available on our site. We'll also have a list and go through them at the end of this session. So this is getting ready for the third wave, and Ian will describe that in a couple of minutes with a visual. But we have a packed event today. We have industry news that we're going to start with, as well as a couple of members that are going to give updates. This will be followed by case studies of a tremendous savings year in 2019, as well as a list of all the award winners, as well as case studies on 3 of them. And this will be followed by 2 technical sessions. We're going to be looking at the chiller plant guide, which is launched and on our website, as well as the introduction of the low carbon heating plant roadmap and how to get you directly involved in that. So before we start, there's a couple of housekeeping things to get through. So everybody's on listen only right now. We'll be unmuting those speakers that have agreed to participate in today's session when the time comes. And if you want to ask us a question, please use the Q&A at the bottom. It should be at the bottom, kind of on the left-hand side of the screen, or if you're having some kind of technical issue, use the chat box and direct your comments towards the panelists or hosts. And I think I'll pass it on to Ian now to get started.
Okay, Michael, thank you. Good morning, everybody in Alberta, and good afternoon, all of the members in Ontario. As Michael said, this is our second members only webinar of the year. We'll show you at the end the program for the rest of the year, but we have a number of open webinars on particular technical subjects. But these are our opportunities to get together with a smaller group and get a bit more depth into how do we move some of these initiatives forward with greening healthcare member hospitals. So as Michael said, please do make use of the Q&A button. I'm asking Amandeep to field the questions, and if we're going to cover them later in the program, we will just wait for that. And some of them we may have to follow up with you afterwards, but please, if you have a question, plug it in there. So as Michael said, it's getting ready for the third wave. So what's the third wave? I guess we're hearing a lot about waves these days, and I'm sure most people by now have seen what I think is this excellent kind of cartoon about how the world is going as we're battling to deal with COVID and all of the implications with that, and with the certainty that coming after that, you know, the government doesn't spend $100 billion and then we all just carry on as usual. There'll be some real economic consequences coming out of that. But riding up through that 10 years from now, we're still going to be dealing with climate change. Climate change is likely to cause more economic disruption and has already killed more people than COVID has. So the climate change issue is not going away. We want to kind of play that, and our role we see in this is working with you to make sure that as that third wave kind of forms, that we're as well prepared as we can be to deal with it. So Michael touched on the agenda. We want to connect with a couple of members around what's happening within the world that we think will be of interest to you, and follow up on the industry news. As Michael said, we've already after 2.5 years of a labor of love, got the chiller plant best practices guide. It's now up on the website. We want to just kind of share highlights of that with you so you can get working on it. And following the June 24th webinar, which was highly attended and got lots of good feedback, I hope you liked it too. We got nothing but positive feedback. We really want to work with you about how do you start down the pathway towards your low carbon heating plant. So that's what we're planning to cover. As always, we start with Members Corner and industry news. And let me first touch on what we see happening out in the world of industry, which is notwithstanding the COVID emergencies, that governments all around the world, and certainly across North America, with varying degrees of enthusiasm, are dealing with emissions and the environment as they have to. So this is an update to the little history box that we presented back on June the 24th. For us, interesting things there are New York City's attempt with Local Law 97 to put carbon caps on buildings. You may recall that earlier we had run the numbers for one of our member hospitals, and the carbon cap levels and the penalties that New York City is contemplating for exceeding those levels would cost a typical larger hospital in Canada hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It's not a small slap on the wrist. But ORAN most recently, July of this year, Canada joined the IEA's, the International Energy Agency's 3% Club. So this agenda is alive and well, and again, it's not going to go away, and it will reemerge as things work through. Ontario is working on its post-2020 for the electrical system and post-2021 for the gas system demand-side management frameworks, and we can expect quite differently shaped programming emerging as we get into the next couple of years. I think one of the cautions for the Ontario folks on the line is that the electrical incentives as we know them, and Vicky, please correct me if I'm wrong, the electrical incentives as we know them come to an end on December 31st of this year. So if you're planning significant electrical reduction projects, this is a really good time to put your application in, and you can see there how to connect with Steve Mooney at Clear Result, who are the delivery agents for the electrical programs here. So industry, it's all happening. These issues are not going away. And again, Greening Healthcare sees its role as keeping you on top of what you need to know right now until the smoke clears a little bit, and making sure that everyone's as prepared as they can be for what's likely to happen over the next year or two. Let's move on to Members Corner, and we want to take a slightly more...
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes, of course.
We asked Vicky to say a few words from the ISO.
That would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So I just have a really quick update. We have received a directive from the ministry to extend the Conservation First framework. So that would have been the programs that were delivered by the utilities and were to have been post-project approved by December 31st of this year. So because of COVID and the challenges for getting projects completed by December 31st of this year, the Conservation First framework has been extended for 6 months. So not all of the programs that are extending are retrofit process and systems, which would include the CHP plants, high performance new construction, and residential new construction. So any of the projects that you had contracted directly with the utilities, you will be able to extend for another 6 months until June of next year. The interim framework that we're in right now is not being extended. It is ending December 31st of this year. We are continuing to work with the ministry to develop some programs that might be available after December 31st of this year into next year. We are hopeful that there will be some programs. We are not sure what they will look like. The budgets we're discussing are very much reduced from what we currently have. So there will likely be some programs, but they may look very different from what it looks like right now. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Does that, and I think that sounds like if you have significant projects on the go,
I would get them in now. Yes, yes, I agree. If you have significant projects on the go, please get the applications in now so they can be pre-approved by December of this year. And then you have a year to install them. You get pre-approval by December of this year, and then you need to have them completed by December of next year. That's right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Right. So it's all happening. Let's move on to Members Corner. As I was saying, we want to put a bit more structure to this. So we've actually put rather than just throwing it out there and hoping somebody responds, we're actually identifying for each members only webinar, this section where we know of something by conversations with you, something interesting going on. So expect over the next couple of years to hear from Michael as we look to kind of pre-plan these sections. We're grateful to Rob and to Harry Vandermeer for for stepping up for this kind of inaugural structured members corner section. But over the course of 2 years, our intention is to connect with every one of our hospitals with the interesting things that we know every one of you is doing. So starting that for this session, Rab, have we got you unmuted, young man?
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Excellent. So Rab is doing a lot of cool stuff around his lighting. His comprehensive lighting LED retrofit is complete, doing some really interesting work on setbacks and scheduling. But what caught our attention in conversations with Rab was what Royal Victoria Hospital, which is in Barrie, an hour north of Toronto, is doing about your new tent. So do you want to update us on how that all came together, Rab, what the timelines were, how it was funded, and how you see that playing out, both the field hospital in quotes and the new ICU beds in your main hospital?
Sure, no problem, Ian. Thanks for that. I'll cover the ICU beds easier first. It's basically what we did, looking at the situation with COVID, and there was a big need for looking at negative pressure areas. And we looked at our ICU possibly being surged at some point or other for people being on ventilators and what have you. So I looked around what we could do, and nearby our ICU was the endoscopy area, which is fed off its own independent air handling unit. So I looked at changing that from a recirc to 100% outside air unit, and we fitted a couple of VFDs to it to control the speed. Got a balancing company in to change the entire area into negative pressure, but keeping a positive core for a sterile area. And it worked really well. So we've inadvertently created some energy savings by reducing these motors by putting these drives on it, and in doing so, it gave us an extra 34 ICU beds if we needed it. Now, regarding the tent you see in front of you on the screen, the pandemic response unit.
Sorry, Rab, what happened to endoscopy while
it's still being used, because endoscopy can still work. There's no requirement for them to have a negative or positive pressure. They're normally all neutral pressure, so
okay,
they can still work. But it was scaled back initially because of the pandemic, but we're now starting to ramp back up again. But because they can still work without under negative or positive pressure, they're starting to seeing patients again for that. And if necessary, we can then fall back to that situation where we have to use it as ICU bed. So we're in a good position there.
excellent.
Now, the pandemic response unit, as we call it, the PRU, is a 70-bed field hospital that was built within 3 months. It's a sprung structure, as they call it. It's like a stretched vinyl fabric over aluminum framing. And it was built all negative pressure with an umbilical corridor connected to the main hospital, and a small tent attached to that again, which is purely the washroom area. 70 beds. It was funded primarily, I believe it was done through Infrastructure Ontario. This is not just for us, for the hospital here at RVH, we're the local site, but it was for the Simcoe Muskoka region, so we like a regional catch-all. It's not going to be primarily for COVID patients, but it's a case of hospital surging. They're looking at how they're actually going to implement it, but it's there should we need it for a second wave hitting us. If you look at the middle picture there, the way they actually constructed it, the central ductwork is all the negative pressure here, and it is branches going down to above each bed, where you would see above the bed, you see a return air duct. So basically it's taking negative pressure out of each of the bed spaces, and the positive pressure was sent down the corridors either side. So it's actually quite an ingenious little bit, and it's got its own heating, cooling, and emergency generators, although it's fed by power from the main building at the moment. That's basically it.
That's great. And so I'm sure that we would love to hear from the other hospitals on the line if you have similar pandemic response activity going on, because I think it's on top of everybody's mind right now. And if you want to contact Rab and learn a bit more about this one, please get hold of Michael. You'll get his contact information at the end, and he can make that connection for you. But fascinating stuff, just when you thought you had enough to do.
Yeah, well, as you said, we're making pretty good savings. We're seeing those now from when we did our LED retrofit. We changed the entire campus to LED, finishing that project last year. We're starting to see the savings on that now. And we've also just back in April did our 4-story office and accommodation lodge for cancer patients, into a full setback when it's out of hours and not being used. And we're hoping to start seeing some big savings on that later in the year.
That's great. Looking forward to keeping reporting on it, Rab. Thank you so much for this.
Absolutely.
And Harry Vandermeer, Executive Director of OSEM at Alberta Health Services. They're enjoying some Alberta sun with his daughter, and but long sleeves, Harry. It's
That's right.
when was that? It doesn't look that warm.
Oh no, that was, well, that's not me really. I just in my head and my daughter's head. The rest,
Okay.
yeah, we're just putting our heads through the little holes.
Okay, so you're not really cowboys.
No, we're supposed to be Dutch people. It's our heritage.
Okay, so we were fascinated with what Harry's doing around recommissioning. Recommissioning is much used term for applied to all kinds of different situations, but what we love about what you're working on there, Harry, if you could kind of give us a bit more background and detail, is this kind of team-based approach to things. So if you look at the the middle bullet here speaks to having the engineer doing the ASHRAE level 2 audit, but at the same time on site having the testing and the controls contractors, as I understand it, doing some of this work kind of on the fly, identifying opportunities and building them. And then the next bullet talking about fully engaging the operators on site at the same time with training. So you bring everybody together to work on the energy profile, and you're looking at the buildings that have high energy intensity or high savings potential. This feels like the perfect model to us. Get the players together and work out solutions together. Where did this come from?
I'm not sure. I just kind of thought of it on my own, I suppose. But and we kind of have two different streams, and the one stream is going to be focused just on buildings that have 100% digital BMS systems, just because most of the infrastructure is in place, but I really feel that things are not optimized. It's really prevalent in our newer buildings, where often our newer buildings are buildings with the highest energy intensity. And so everything is there, all the bells, and consultants are really good about giving us buildings that have all the bells and whistles. But just like anything, when the project is almost done, trying to get the last 5 or 10% done, the consultant is long gone, the contractors are long gone, and people are just kind of cleaning up because everybody's on the next project. And of course, to the consultant's defense, I'm not sure what it's like in Ontario, but here when we're given a new building, it often comes with a lot of shelved space where we want the building, but we don't have the funding to fully implement all the programs that the clinical want to implement. So, and the consultant doesn't always know, what's going on the program side. And even when our clinical people move into the space, they're moving into a new building, and a lot of decisions are made in 2D, and it's a little bit more difficult for them to think in 2D. So once they get into the space, then they discover, oh, actually, this shouldn't be here, or this doesn't work. So there's a lot of things that change. So, so the intent was that we would, once the building was in place for at least a year, so it's kind of stabilized, clinical people have made all the changes they're going to make, and we've got a baseline. Then we could put together this team of the consultants, as Ian mentioned, the balancing contractor and the controls contractor and our facilities people, representatives, to kind of sit down together, and we would expect the consultant to take the lead, and they would just kind of discover things as they needed, and hopefully the controls contractor can make the changes right there. Mm-hmm. And then whatever can't be done, because we have to kind of say, okay, well, we're going to just pick a time, say, okay, because we need to tender this out, saying, we'll assume 5 days. Whatever doesn't get done in that 5 days, then everybody kind of goes away. The consultant puts together a sequence and like a performance spec. Controls contractor does their thing, and then we come back again once everything's done to verify that the changes have been taken place as per the consultant's thoughts. So now with COVID, we have to do things a little bit differently. So my original intention was to have this all be an on-site thing, get the ASHRAE level 2 done, but really kind of focus on the BMS system. Now with COVID in Alberta, we have right now, of all the provinces, we have the highest percentage of new cases per capita. So people aren't so willing to come. I'm just anticipating we might be shutting down our hospitals to external contractors at some point. They were shut down from middle of March till the end of June. So in July, we just started opening the doors for external contractors again. But we're kind of in a second wave at the moment. So I'm expecting that might happen again soon. So what we're probably now having is we'll kind of have to split this into a phase 1 and a phase 2 where everything is kind of remote. The consultant will be remote dialing in, the controls contractor will dial in, and I'll have one of my staff sitting in as well, just to make sure everybody's kind of doing their thing. And then if we still feel there's opportunity, that at some point, you know, once people are comfortable flying again, and we have this COVID behind us, we'll kind of do a phase 2 to bring somebody on site to get the things we can't get.
So this philosophy of getting the most we can out of our existing infrastructure, I think, has always been kind of part of Harry's strategy around this, and it's a key one. And looking at that combination of the players, the operators, the testing contractor, controls contractor, having them on site, it sounds a lot like some of the previous case studies we've reported on, like North York General and Grand River and Markham Stouffville and others that don't spring to mind. But this idea of a team approach to identifying and fixing opportunities is a real winner. Harry, this seems to be the foundation, this documentation of your buildings and which systems serve where. Like, who produces these excellent drawings, and how much time does that take, and how could other hospitals do the same thing? Because this sets the stage for everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, so this is intended to be done before we go out for a contract price. So when we have our tender document together to hire the consultant, that the consultant will have this information. So really what it is for is, just hang on. Okay, yeah, we'll do that after.
Why is it like that?
I'm not sure. Sorry, working from home. So what I want to do is overlay on top of our CAD drawing. So we have, all of our hospitals have a floor plan, but it's just architectural. And then it's kind of hit and miss where we have mechanical, electrical. So I want them to take the floor plan, and we overlay on top of that floor plan the air handling unit layout with some information on the air handling unit, like horsepower, whether it's a VAV or constant volume, whether the VAV boxes are digital or pneumatic. And then on top of that, we want to identify what the occupancy is. So in a glance, you can kind of tell whether you have an area, maybe the air handling unit is on 24/7 because it's mixing a 24/7 space with a non-24/7 space. And then maybe it's just a matter of scheduling the VAV boxes, or if it's all pneumatic, whether there's a capital opportunity to upgrade the VAV boxes, or whether just you throw in a motorized damper, a couple motorized dampers, and shut off air to a section. So it's meant to kind of have a first glance piece of information to see what the quick wins are.
And do most of your sites have CAD drawings already?
Well, they have floor plans. So
yeah.
I have one. I hired a draftsman, and a couple of years ago we got some grant funding from the government because we were paying the carbon tax to the province, and so there's some grant money available. So so I got $6 million, and we're provincial, so it's a whole province. So I got $6 million from the government to start a seed money to start a program going. So what I did is I hired 12 electricians, and I created a project management office. So in the project management office, there's 4 people that just kind of do project stuff. And then I hired 1 measurement and verification specialist and a draftsperson. So this is the main thing that the draftsperson does. They also produce infographics that our communications department had initially created, but they discovered they didn't have the time to follow through. So my draftsperson also does these one-page infographics once we have completed a project. So we measure everything, and so we can have savings are verified. We know our costs, of course, and we can outline in a very quick one page. You know, we put them on the elevator floor, into newsletters, what we've done, and what the results of the project has been. And the reason we hired electricians was because we've got 100 acute sites, but in our larger sites, and for the most part, you know, 80% of the lighting is very simple to do. But if you're going to have an external contractor do it, then they need to have some tender documents. So what we did was, for our larger sites, we put 2 electricians in each site. We had material ordered before they arrived. So they arrived, did their orientation for 2 or 3 days, and then they're out doing lights right away. And then we have an odd area that's atypical. We just hire a consultant, or we work with a supplier to figure out what the best solution is for that particular area.
That's great. And this feels like something that that other hospitals could use summer students for example, to get this put together. But for this to inform your team working on site to try to find and implement improvements is feels like a masterstroke. That's what makes it all kind of possible. The other thing that struck us when we saw your documentation was just how many different ways there are of making the most of your existing infrastructure without significant retrofits. And not meaning to ask anybody to read all of this, but man, there's a lot of things that can be done. And when you put them all together at one time, it just gives an idea of just how big the savings can be just through operational controls, maintenance improvements. So and hopefully we can get you back, Harry, to report on how some of these projects unfold over time. What are the timelines for this?
Well, we're hopefully be rolling things out pretty quick with the, so now because of the COVID thing, I'm having the balancing contractor go on site beforehand. So by the time we have a consultant on board, they already will have the balancing report. So the balancing report is really just taking measurements of all the air systems, the pumps, and doing a low profile through the air handling units, like the filters, the coils, and everything. So I want to have that done, and we got one ready to, I think it's on the go already, and my project manager is releasing that, and I've got another one I was working on this morning, and I hope to have another couple done today. And I think we got about 5 or 6 buildings that we want to do this to.
That's great. So once again, Harry, thanks so much for this. It's good to get insight into how you actually tackle, and since you've got hundreds of facilities, everybody else should feel kind of humbled and figure out that we can actually handle the ones that we've got. But thanks again to Rab and to Harry for kind of bringing us up to date with what's happening there. The same thing applies. If you're interested in following up, please do so through Michael, and we'll keep this dialogue rolling. But great initiatives, great progress, interesting things